All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling that universal tug of war every independent creator knows all too well. Holding on to your artistic integrity, well, actually making a living. It's a conflict as old as time, but today we're looking at it through a fascinating academic lens that might honestly completely change how you run your practice.
Before we get to the solution, ask yourself, how many times have you felt totally torn between being the classic starving artist and the pressure of becoming a corporate sellout? It's a heavy question, right? You want to make something deeply meaningful, something with real, massive cultural weight, but you've still got bills to pay, materials to buy, and a business to run.
To figure this out, we're going to look at the creative business conflict, introduce something called discursive culture, explore products as storytellers, designing a life project, the local ecosystem effect, and wrap up with the creative balancing act. We're unpacking a brilliant academic framework using some amazing real-world case studies from Argentina to show exactly how to bridge this gap. So, Section 1, the creative business conflict. Picture this. On one side, you've got design culture. It's all about creative autonomy, deep meaning, making sense of the world. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have entrepreneurial culture. And that is driven by pure business logic, efficiency, profitability, managing risk. For the longest time, these were seen as total opposites. The business world would just brush off designers as the people who make things look pretty, totally ignoring them as strategic drivers of culture. Honestly, it's no wonder stepping into the business side feels so incredibly alienating if you're creative at heart. Moving on to Section 2, introducing discursive culture. Now, this discursive culture thing, it's not just some dry academic theory. It's the actual on-the-ground work of aligning your creative soul with the daily grind you need to survive in a capitalist system. The academics call this semiotic material work, but in plain English, it just means your professional identity, your daily routines, and the physical stuff you make are constantly negotiating with market pressures so they can tell one unified story. It's a real-time, active conversation between your creative thinking and your business doing. And there is a sweet spot right in the middle of all this. It proves you really don't have to choose sides. You operate in that hybrid middle ground. You don't abandon your design roots, but you also don't surrender to some unfeeling corporate machine. Instead, you build your own internal framework. You define what quality and meaning look like to you, even if it pushes back against standard market rules. And honestly, realizing this is incredibly liberating. It means your business strategy can literally be treated as its own creative design project. Which brings us to Section 3, products as cultural storytellers. Researchers found that the most successful creative ventures do something incredibly special. They aren't just selling commodities. Their products actually act as cultural mediators. They aren't just isolated objects rolling off an assembly line. They spark deep emotional responses. They solve systemic problems, and they convey a real sense of local identity. Basically, the physical product becomes the tangible proof that legitimizes your core values to the rest of the world. Take Oso Studio as an example. They design these beautiful plant water dispensers, and they capture this idea perfectly. They talk about how when people encounter their objects, they smile. It softens the environment and eases tensions. For them, the real value isn't just a transaction at the checkout counter. It's that emotional spark when a user interacts with their work. The product creates a whole atmosphere which naturally builds a deeply loyal audience. Because when your work resonates on that emotional level, you stop competing on price and you start connecting on shared meaning. There's another Argentine brand, Las Pulpas, and they treat their sneaker design like an infinite loop. It's fascinating. They constantly shift roles. First, they're the users, then they become the redesigners, and then they're the users all over again. This isn't some linear corporate growth chart. The product is a living, breathing medium that documents their learning every single day. This constant iteration ensures they never lose touch with why they started making the shoes in the first place. It completely dissolves the barrier between creator and consumer. But all right, that brings us to a massive narrative speed bump. We actually need to step away from the material objects for a second and look at the existential journey of the creator. Think about it. Is all this really just about growing a company? Or is there something much deeper going on? Let's look at Section 4, designing a life project. The source material grounds this perfectly with a quote, "Beyond designing a product, design serves to design life." In this framework, true entrepreneurial success isn't just a spike in revenue. It's judged by how coherent it is with your personal life model. Why even start a venture? Usually, it's rooted in your family, your community, and frankly, how you actually want to spend your Tuesdays. Design isn't just for objects. It's a compass for navigating your life.
I mean, if your business scales perfectly but leaves you completely miserable, the design has ultimately failed, right?
To prevent that, these creators draw some really strict boundaries to protect their sanity. Because while the mighty algorithm might count your engagement metrics, it absolutely cannot narrate your story. Social media enforces this panicked, anxiety-inducing tempo. You feel like you have to post every 5 minutes just to stay relevant. But to survive, these designer entrepreneurs actively protect what they call their narrative time, a pace of making that genuinely respects the craft. They are deliberately rejecting the rush, and by doing that, they're preserving the very magic that makes their work valuable.
That perfectly sets up Section 5, the local ecosystem effect. When researchers mapped out the Buenos Aires design ecosystem, they found that a venture's legitimacy is deeply tied to its specific local territory. It is not a monolith. For example, an industrial machinery venture builds credibility by being reliable for local factories. But a craft-oriented fashion studio, they build trust through visibility at local cultural festivals. Your immediate environment dictates the entire rhythm of your business. You simply cannot separate the creator from the context they create within. Look at Dip Studio, for instance. They use exclusively local seeds and regional suppliers to craft their biomaterials. And they prove a really surprising fact. Limiting your scale geographically can actually massively increase your cultural relevance. By intentionally rooting their supply chain in their immediate backyard, they build deep local trust, and that completely replaces the need for traditional corporate marketing. They aren't trying to be everything to everyone everywhere. Their true power comes from their proximity, which lets them dodge that exhausting trap of pursuing global scale at all costs. And finally, Section 6, the creative balancing act. The underlying secret to this whole framework is surprisingly simple. It's coherence. It's the daily active effort of making sure your creative values, your routines, and your outputs actually align. Now, this isn't about achieving some static, perfect state of zen. It's an ongoing negotiation. You're making sure the products you produce, the narrative of your life, and the local ecosystem you operate in all point in the exact same direction. When things feel impossibly hard in your business, it's usually because one of those elements has fallen out of alignment. So I'll leave you with this thought for your next big leap. How will you balance what you think with what you do? Because you don't have to surrender your art to commerce, and you certainly don't have to starve for your art. By cultivating your own discursive culture, you can actively design that overlap. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep thinking, keep doing, and make sure they make sense together.